Okay, welcome to the TotalControlPro Dynamics manufacturing platform kind of overview. Today we're going to be taking you through the management panel, the shop floor interface, and then as well as our tracking screens. So as we said, it's a bit of a light touch. We're not going to go into every kind of department and what it offers, but we will speak around some of the areas, but we should hopefully give you enough of an overview on what it entails and how you can utilize Dynamics for your business. So firstly, what we're going to start with is what everybody loves is the visual aspect. So we'll start off with some of our dashboards. So as you can see, we have them set up and they're quite easy to actually go into and set up what you want to see. And just while we're doing that, we'll have a quick flick through just to kind of show. So if we're going to set up a new dashboard, it's as simple as just clicking on the button. You can name that to whatever is relevant for your department. And then once named, you could just set up from a selection of widgets that are available, which will then populate the dashboard. And it's literally as simple as that. The great thing about that, it could also be set as a permission, so it's relevant for the department, and they'll only see what they need to view, and that way keeping everybody kind of focused on the area. So that way we can see, for instance, we're looking at low stock level items, any quotes orders, release orders, etc., and the values against that. Next, we're going to go over to our tracking screens. So there's a variation of these. One, we're going to look at the end of line screen. And this is showing basically what is happening on the shop floor. These screens we like to actually have put up around the manufacturing site. They then set up for the teams. The great thing about this is that they can kind of self-manage. You're able to see the description, whatever is relevant in terms of works order number, when it's required by the last stage, so where it was at, who worked on it, the current stage, where it's going to, and then the final stage as it's been completed. And again, if any issues are happening, so with the very top one that we're looking at, we can see that that one's currently stopped. So there's a potential issue there. Everything is flagged up. And then obviously they know exactly what's going on and something can be done around that. Next, we're going to go over to the overview screen. Now there's a variety of different views within that. And what we're looking at here is that we can see the works order, reference, etc., required by production date, and then the priorities, and you can set these against the works orders if they're high priority, medium, low, etc. And then we can see a little late bar tab. And what that is that against each of the operations, there's a time that's been set in order for that to be completed. And if any one of those operations are running over, it would flag up. So it's not late yet in terms of at the door, but it's giving you an indication that the time that we've set across for these tasks to be completed, these operations, that we're running over. And that way it gives you an insight, a heads up, and a decision can be made, resources could be added, etc., or maybe moved on to another machine to ensure that we reach deadline. On the far side, we can see the status that is currently in. It's in progress, it's been built. We can see the stoppage at the very last one. We can see how many tasks that are within that works order, and then the time actually, how many minutes is actually required to complete and how long it's actually taken. If we're going to the next one, into the work order lines, again, very similar. So again, broken down, different information. One of the things just to note is that on each of these screens, you can actually click on the column chooser. So you can actually select the information that you want to see actually on each of these pages. So it might be that you don't need to see everything. You just want to have a quick view or something specific. You could set it to that. And it's as simple as going back and clicking and toggling on and off. It makes life a little bit easier. We're going to go into the tracked allocations next. And if we just click onto the column chooser and we actually remove the kit and kit references, we're also going to deselect those two. Or yeah, we can actually see then those operations and those routes that it's actually going through. And one of the things is, again, you can have an overview or you can go into a bit more granular detail. If you click onto any one of these operations, we can actually go in and see what actually has occurred. So we can see the employee, we can see when the job had been started, when it was completed, the estimation time, but then the actual time it was completed. And we have what we call dynamic fields, which is a data entry point. It could be a QC check, and we can see then what was actually captured against that operation. If there's any materials consumed, you can click on that and it would highlight it at that point as well. And you can go through at any point of an operation and click into it and actually see what has actually been done at that point. And the last screen, which everybody likes, is the track data creation screen. So we're looking at the estimates versus actuals. So what we've seen here is we've seen the works orders, we've seen the operations, and we can see if they're in green or red. So basically, if we're in green, we've completed in time or earlier. And obviously, if we're in red, that operation has actually taken longer than expected. And again, that's where you can actually click into the information, dive in, and actually see why we've actually went over the allocated time and what's been holding up production. And then lastly, on the track screen, we can go over to our employee monitoring. And what we're having a look is we can see the staff that have actually clocked in on the day. So we can see who we have on site. And then we can see each of the operations that the team members are actually working on and what is the status of that. So if it's been started, completed, we can see when it's been stopped. So we have a clear view on who's working on where, what is that status and what is happening. You can click into any one of the staff members and you can get a kind of deeper view in terms of the works orders, the operations, if there were any we call Z codes, which we'll touch on a little bit later, if they've been on a break, if they've been on a meeting, if they've been called into training at any of these stages, all that information appears. So you have it all collated in one area, but you can see what workforce you have that has been clocked in and ready to start the day. That's just a quick overview of a kind of tracking and dashboard screens, the visualization. So you're getting to see what is happening in very quick views and then being able to dive a little bit deeper. But as we've seen those works orders carried out, let's actually have a look again how that actually reaches the shop floor. Is we'll start off at our customers. We'll go into one of our accounts and we'll go into one of the customers that we've created. Again, as we're looking on the left-hand side, some information that we're capturing, it's just to note that, again, if there's certain information that's needed, you can create custom fields. So we can add in things like shipping codes, promotion codes, etc. It could be any other additional client information that you might need on that page that can be done. But what we're going to go to do very quickly is create a new order. We'll set a production date. We'll set that in for today, required by 4th. Perfect. And we're going to go ahead and add in one of our items. So we're going to go ahead and we're building torches just on the site. Now there's a few clever things that you can do from this quoting stage is that you can actually click into the actual bill of materials. So if it's a case that this client has ordered a standard product, but in fact they would like to add some additional items to it. So some additional parts, it might be a gold case, it might be a slightly different LED, whatever that looks like and relevant for your business, is that you can actually go in and choose from a selection of components or materials that you might have and then actually add that right from the quoting stage. This doesn't affect the initial template. It'll take a snapshot, but it starts to roll up all those costings so that when we go back to the quoting stage and those changes have been made, we can then actually send that off to the client, whatever the process is. Once it's approved, etc., it can then actually be released into the shop floor and they will have that bill of materials, those instructions. It's a standard torch, but in fact, it's got a slightly different LED and it's got a golden case, whatever changes that were made. So that all the information gets relayed to the team on the shop floor, and they're then able to carry that out. Some of the areas just on the top tabs, you'll see you can load up any files. So one of the works orders, once it's released, will be created, but from a file, we can load up any drawings, any designs that might come through from a client can be added through. And then under the notes section, anytime something has been changed or added to the file, it will automatically capture that. So you have a full traceability, who's been on the customer file, when a drawing revision has come through or costing has been changed, production date, etc. It'll capture that, timestamp it, and it'll capture the person's name. So you've got that full traceability against it. Just looking on the left-hand side, We can set things like the priority that we spoke about earlier. We can set in things, delivery dates. You can also preset delivery dates against a client file. We can select in the addresses and who will be collected, or if it's an external. We can set the basic, your contacts, any comments. And then again, as we were speaking earlier, there's a number of custom fields that can be created that's relevant for the business and the information that you would need to capture. So what we're going to do is we're going to get and convert this to a quote that could be sent off to a client that has now come back, happy to be signed off. We are now going to release that. Now you'll see if we click into the works order, now that's actually been released, you'll see that a works order has actually been created for the sales order. So we can see that this now is available for the shop floor to actually get started on production. Press up. So we've now logged in into our shop link phase, and these could be a number of different ways. So the team on the shop floor can either interact with a mobile device, it could be a standard Android or iOS. It could be one of the kind of warehouse manufacturing devices that actually have a built-in scanner. It could be done through a tablet, a fixed workstation, or if you're still migrating from paper, we can still print off a traveler sheet with QR code, and it could be scanned through. So as you can see, we have a built-in clocking system, as we spoke about and touched on earlier. So we're going to go ahead and clock in. That just shows that we're on site and we've clocked in, but we haven't yet started work. Brilliant. So yeah, so we've clocked in. We've come over to our tracking screen. We've seen the work. That's now the task that is available. And what we've done on the shop floor interface is we kept it really simple. We want the teams on the shop floor to really focus on what they're doing. You know, we don't want what the interact to be a hindrance or a distraction. And really all it is to actually, for them to start the tracking is that they'll hit play. It then is actually starting to actually kind of count the time now against this operation. As you see at the bottom, we've kept it really simple. So we have a pause, and that would mean that, you know, if they've stepped away for whatever reason, this could be for training, it could be for a meeting, it could be that they need to go on lunch or on a break. If you want to capture time on the person away from the job. Secondly, we have the stop button, and this could be for something that's gone wrong that actually has stopped the job from continuing. That could be it could be any number of reasons that are relevant, and these are obviously configurable to the business, but it could be something that there's a damaged part or a missing part. And once a stoppage occurs, is that it immediately appears on the tracking screens and on the dashboards. I could also have an alert that could be sent out to the relevant person, and then the relevant actions could be then taken to get that operation back up and running, so production can continue. And then lastly, before we click on it though, but just to highlight, is the kind of green tick. And what that is once the job's completed, they'll click on that. And if there's a data capture point, a dynamic field, is that they can select from a drop down or a text, whatever it's been set, and then move on to the next task. A few other areas to note that's available there is that they can view the BOM. They are able to look at the material allocations. They do need to switch out or add additional materials they're able to. And it has a full traceability to that, and it's logged against who's done it and what batch or bin or serialized part, if it has been selected from. Also is the kind of files that we can attach, so they can see things like images, any work to lists. So anything that needs to be loaded up for the team, they'll have full access. Any drawings, any revisions that have come through from a client can then be uploaded, and the team is always kind of working off the latest. If you know you're having a print as someone new and there's a kind of guideline in terms of what they need to do, can be uploaded, they can work from that. So that's all available to them from the screen. And then one of the other areas is that you can actually take an image. So again, depending on the area that they're working on, if part of the quality control or if there's an issue with the actual item and it needs to be captured, is that they can take a photo, it can be loaded up against the operation, and then that will actually then form part of that traceability all the way through. And what we're going to go ahead and do now on this first part is really just to click off that to close off this operation that we've completed. And you can see we've reset a dynamic field, so QC test, and we just set a simple pass or fail. and that's gone through. So now that first operation has now been completed, and then we're able to go over to the next and kind of work through that list of what's available for that person is actually logged in. Great, so we've just come back now over to the management panel. But one of the areas we just wanted to quickly lightly touch on is that on the shop floor, we're going through stoppages. Now that could mean a number of things as we touched on, but it could be something that has actually happened with the item that the shop floor is actually working on. So it could be that it's been damaged or been marked to a point that a number of options could be available once it's stopped. It could be something that needs to be remade or reworked. So it might just need to go back through a process which requires additional time, potentially additional material, and obviously that needs to be captured. So what we've done is we've come to the management panel, we've come over to allocation management, and we've looked at jobs that have been placed on stop. Now, the team on the shop floor, they have direct access on whatever they're utilizing to activate or rework or remake, but as well from the management panel, we can actually see that. So what we're going to start with first is you'll have a look that you have the option of a rework or remake. We're going to go with a rework first. And what we've done is we've actually set up some rework templates, and these will be available then for the team on the shop floor. And they can then select what process do they need to actually start on. So the stoppage happened on installed battery. Doesn't maybe need to go back to a pre-build preparation where there was thermal in the battery, and they could start it from there. And then that would then capture those additional times, etc., as we go through. If we go back and we select, we're actually going to remake it, so it's been damaged, or we can't go through a process, but it'll tell you that this will actually be cancelled, and then obviously a new build will then actually start. So once we click into it, but what it will do is that it'll give us the option of actually looking at the materials now. So we'll go into that one that we've actually restart. And as you can see, is that we actually have the torch body. And at the top, it'll give us an option. Do we want to salvage or do we want to scrap? So it could be a case that the torch body has been dented to a point that it's damaged beyond repair. So we can actually scrap that. And if we choose to scrap it, we can then book it into a location that we could set up, and that could be a quarantine location. So you'll have that visibility of what stock has been scrapped and where it's sitting. Alternatively, if the torch body was not damaged and it was only the inside, the assembled battery part, is that we can actually salvage the torch body, book it back into stock, and actually then use that for this remake, assemble the new battery, and then place it into this current torch body. As you can see, we have the option there of either scrappage, and we have a scrappage location, or we could salvage. So just coming back now to the stand on the management panel, we just clicked over into our inventory. So we have a full inventory module, obviously capturing all finished goods, any sub-assemblies, any components, raw materials, etc. You can categorize is how we would set that up. But what we're going to showcase first is just one of our finished goods. So we'll start with that type of standard torch. We'll click into that. So we can see enough information that will capture. Parts can be serialized, the description, stock codes, if there's any different revisions, the categories it'll fall under, the routines that we've set aside to it. We can set it as bundles. We can set it up as obviously our selling price, but price can also be generated from our BOM cost. It will also work out an average cost price as well as an average BOM cost price. Down below, as it being a finished item, we'll come back to the kind of levels on one of our raw materials, but you can see what's in stock, what has been allocated, what's available, what's in production, and what's currently on order. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see then some additional information we kind of pulled in, so we can see our production demand, and that's based on the capacity in terms of how much we can build for the day, which can be set up. We can see that there's an average build time. So as these torches or as the items are being manufactured and built, the system starts to collect that time in real time as they're being built, and will start to work out averages against that. Going over to the files, we can start to capture things like images or any work to lists, etc. And as you can see, just with a simple toggle on and off, is that we can have it shown either on the purchase order, on the sales order, or on the shop floor interface. Whilst we're going to go into the actual bill of materials. So from here, we can see the design BOM. We can see the manufacturing BOM. So these are all the core items that is actually required to actually build the torch. The design BOM could be any additional things where we can change the batteries inside, the LED lighting, the casing, etc., etc. Lastly, we're going to go into the route. So fairly a very simple route just for building a torch. So what we can see is the work center, so where the actual operations are taking place. And there's going to be multiple work centers scattered around the manufacturing plant. We have a lead time, so time in between where they're moving from one operation to the next. It could be for curing or something's being coated or being painted, or potentially it's actually sent off-site and needed to be tracked off-site. That could be added in as well. If we go back to our inventory and we actually go to one of our items, we'll go to our AAA battery. So again, very similar information, what we had, but a few additional kind of add-ins you'll see under our levels. We'll see that we've actually set our maximum stock quantities, a recommended minimum quantity. So procurement always has an idea in terms of what stock they should be holding. This could be based on the data being collected, how many materials actually used, how many builds come through, etc. When the last stock take was done, stock take days in between, and then we're looking at reorder levels. Going over to the supplier, we can see then that we have a default supplier. Could be based around costing, comparison on lead times, or supplying at multiple items at a time. But we have the option of being able to order from any of them. If we go over to the parent tab, this is showcasing where this material is used in what builds. So it could be if this item was to be discontinued and we're having to replace, is what would it affect? So you have a full traceability of where it's been actually consumed in. And again, as we said about the custom fields, you could be set, we either set them based on a manufacturer, so you can select, we will be talking about batteries, so it could be an ever-ready energized Duracell, and then the voltage, etc. It could be color, it could be whatever is required, but quite simply just to add and then selecting. One of the things we move over just into the locations is that you can set up the locations and then actually also book that stock and against it. So we'll have where things are kept, how many we have available, what's on order, etc., costings, when it was added, if they came from a batch number or they've been serialized. You can search by location, you can search by item number for quick, easy views and searches, but everything is collated. Just touching on to our serial numbers. So as we're looking into any of the parts and the materials, is that any part can be serialized for full traceability, and you can choose what components there are. Just quickly stopping in our suppliers. Again, as you expect, these can be set up if we click into any of them. You can capture any information. Again, down on the left-hand side, you can add in any custom fields, so there can be any additional information that you require against the supplier. But as well as we can upload files where it could be when you are receiving the materials from your supplier, what is acceptable. So for some steel manufacturers, if things are pitted or slightly marked, depending on the grade of steel, etc., you might have a checklist, and that's available for your goods in staff member, and they can just double check the materials as they come onto location and check out what is acceptable against that. Going over to our purchase orders. So we've actually just went ahead and actually created a purchase order. And if we click into that, so what we've done is we've gone through the process. It's been released now, so we've sent it off to the supplier. It's been approved. We've just ordered some standard torch cases. And one of the processes is that these permissions can be set. So a purchase order can be created specifically for a build. Automatically, it'll raise the purchase order. It'll allocate the stock specifically against that sales order, works order. Someone can come in to approve that. That could be sent off either for a quote to your supplier to ensure that the costings are expected, or if it's all been, costings been approved, that can go straight off and then just be sent through. And then once it's actually been released and it's delivered on site, before any invoices are raised or payment made, whether it's through Sage or Xero, etc., whatever's been used, is that you want to ensure that all stock is on site as expected, booked in and booked into location before then this purchase order is actually closed off and any payments then is being processed. So we'll quickly just go over to our Shopfloor interface. So we're on the Shopfloor interface. We're going to go into our goods in. So I'm working your goods in, order has just arrived. We can see P26. We can click into that. I can have a look to see quantity rates. Does it match up? We can select the QR. I can pull up all that information, whatever's actually being collected against that. I can be right, everything is here, is as required. I can go ahead and book that in. I then have the option, okay, where we're gonna actually book that in. So it's our battery case. So what we want to do is, or sorry, a torch case, apologies. So what we want to do is book into that standard code. If it's a particular batch, it'll auto generate, or you can manually create a batch against that. But we can check all that off and then go ahead and actually book that in and complete that. So coming back over to the management panel. So we gone into our purchase orders. Now again, you'll see the tabs on top, so you can, you can segment these and look at what's been completed, what's approved, etc. Or we can do a quick search on the purchase order. So it was purchase order P26, and you can see now that it's actually been completed. So we can see when it was created and ordered, when it was expected, and we can actually see when it was completed and actually booked in. And then, so fallen in from production. So many clever things around what the Dynamics platform kind of offers. One of the things is when we're looking at scheduling work. So these could be taken on a variety of different parameters, things like the priority, things like the production date, release dates, delivery dates, etc. And what the system will automatically do based on setting up the production demand. So what are we able to produce on a daily, it could be a weekly, it could be a monthly, whatever is set, is that it will automatically schedule based on kind of those requirements. What we've done is we've actually pulled those works orders out, as you can see now there on the left-hand side, because we know in an ideal world is that we automatically schedule in work, but a client will phone up and be like, right, there's been an issue. Can we get this out and delivered by tomorrow? Or a last minute order comes through that takes priority. And we know then that we need to actually have a look at how is this going to affect. And a simple drag and drop bucket is that we're able to actually look at how that will affect production. So we can start to pull things in and out and actually drop them in and look at how much demand will take. And we can start to switch certain works orders around where necessary and kind of add that priority against it and that urgency. So again, the system would set things automatically for you, but you still have that full control to be able to come in and start to pull in and out work and actually reschedule yourself to see, right, where can we actually fit that in to get the work out. We have the same for the machine assignment. We don't have a machine set up, but in a very sense, you can set up your machine groupings, the machines, and we can start to look at what's been assigned against those machines, what's the load against them, what machines are currently operating, and we can set them for the work centers, as well as the operations monitor, which can also allow you against each of the operations. We can start to see the status, any work pending, any work that is started, any work that has been paused or currently stopped, but we can actually start to see the load against the operations. And these can also be set up against the machine, so we can start to see what's been set, what works orders, can any of this been shifted, what's a priority, etc., and how much is actually being set against the team and the operations. So again, putting all that kind of information together and having that overview, really start to look at how much work has been taken on, what's the effect, and can we kind of stick to production, or can we actually take on more based on what we're currently seeing? We actually have more capacity. So start to kind of give you those insights in real time, and then additional information and decisions can be made. Just coming over now, as we're staying on the scheduling, machine assignments, operations monitor, is obviously the planner. So kind of two elements to it. Looking at a Gantt start style planner is that we're looking at resources and operations. So the first tab we're looking at now is our resources. As you can see, all our resources, all the works orders that we have are actually overdue, highlighted in yellow, but we can see the priority set on top. We can see our staff members on the left-hand side and the groups that they're part of. So we can group them based on the skill levels and what work they're actually able to carry out. If for any reason there's been any issues, we can look at recalculating the plan, which will go ahead and reschedule based on shift patterns, requirements, etc., and obviously bring it in to this week. Now, as you can see, that it's actually taken it from a couple of months ago, brought it into this week, replanned it. Unfortunately, still overdue because they were meant to go out earlier, but it's set now for the week that we have. Looking at the operations, as we can see, is that we have the operations that goes into the routing, that goes into actually building the item, and we can see then the work actually planned against those operations. So kind of 2 areas in the Gantt chart, we can see based on resource, the works orders, the team, skill levels, and then actually see what is actually then set against the operations, what's been planned in, the times, the dates, etc. There's a lot more to come from the planner. We'll kind of keep you and leave you there, as there's some real smart elements that have been added to it that will be available to our clients very shortly. Okay, and kind of lastly, what we're going to touch on, and as I said, there's many other elements, to Dynamics platform, but we'll be the whole day kind of going through it. But one of the kind of important areas just to finish on is that all that information that we're collecting, all that data, as manufacturing is happening, as purchase orders are coming through and things are being dispatched, etc., is that the data is being captured, and what do we do with that? So we have a number of different areas under reporting that covers inventory, resources, and other, which we'll touch on. And all these reports are available as standard. They can be generated, they can be exported. They're a mixture of data and visual reports. And the great thing is that you can pull these at any time. They can be integrated in and set up if you want to put it into a Power BI as well. You have the option there. But what we're looking at is be able to pull that data and then be able to make a decision in real time against that. So one of the reports we pulled up, and we'll just go through a few. One is a goods in report. So we can see all orders that have come through from a supplier over almost a year period. We can see the descriptions, the codes, the POs, etc., the bins that are against that, the costings, the quantities, the values, and we can start to kind of track against the suppliers. We can also then start to look at rating suppliers, delivery times, etc., against that. Great. So going on from our goods in, we're just going to choose another one. So we're going to go into an item type production demand. And we'll look at it over a yearly period. So we'll go back from 1 year back and just generate that report. So we can have a look at our stock item types. We can see the days average times the week, the month. We can also do a drop down on the type and actually look at the selling price against that and run a report. And it'll give us our averages across as well. Again, as we're saying, a mixture of visual and data reports. And then what we're going to do next is we're just going to go over to our resource. And as we were saying earlier, that obviously we have a built-in clocking system. So great for the likes of HR and for finance is be able to pull a timesheet. So if we go over to our employee timesheets, and we'll select an employee, and if we choose a range, and we generate, is that we can actually export that. So we can actually see, so again, this is actual time worked on orders. So we can start to look at, we have one that's a clocking timesheet and a variation of both. So you can see when an employee was actually clocked in, but the actual times and the time spent working on the works orders and the operations. So quite accurate. And depending on how the organization, how you set up and what you need to pull, that's all there, and this can be exported. So yeah, so that kind of concludes our kind of light touch kind of overview of the Dynamics platform. As we said earlier, that there's so much more to it, but we'll end up having you for the whole day, and we appreciate your time kind of walking, letting us guide you through and showing you what the capabilities are. And if you'd like to find out more, please get in contact with the team. Any questions around it, we'll be happy to help, as well as if you'd like a kind of detailed demo that's designed around with some of your data for your business, get in contact and we can do that and carry that out with you. And again, thanks so much.